Alrighty then. Okay, I think we'll get started because I know we have a lot to get through. So good morning, everybody. It is Thursday. As we all know, there are 15 sleeps to Christmas. That's the important stat for today. You're all very welcome to IT Cork's Breakfast Tech Talk on Industry 4.0. So thanks for joining us. We know it's an early hour and not the brightest of mornings, but bear with us. We have lots in store for you, and I hope you have your coffee and your croissants on the ready because you're in for an informative and inspiring start to your Thursday. My name is Jane Bergen, and I work for Dell Technologies and I'm a long-time member of IT at Cork. So it's my pleasure to welcome you all this morning to this exciting session about the current trend in automation and data exchange from manufacturing technologies. A few small pieces of useful information before we get started. So this session is being recorded. So for anyone who misses it, we will be sharing it on social media in the coming days. Now, also during the event, we will pop some polls up on the screen. We do that to collect some data, and we will also share that on social media in the coming days. So thanks, Vivian. There is our first one on screen right now. So what we'll do is get you to pop your answer in there, and we can get started with the data collection. These will pop up throughout the event, so feel free to have an opinion. We absolutely encourage you to do that, and as I say, we will share that information. Great content in store for you. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our esteemed panelists who will individually speak to you, giving you an insight into their world as it pertains to the exciting area of Industry 4.0. So joining us this morning, we have Ian Jones, CEO of InnoPharma Group. We have Jean Carberry, the Principal Officer at the Department of Business, Enterprise and Innovation. And we have Martin Leahy, Senior Technology Director at BioMarin. So you're all very welcome, and huge thank you guys for taking time out of extremely busy schedules to be with us this morning. I know it's very busy, and we're wrapping up for end of year and end of quarter and all that fiscal year stuff. So thank you so much. For our attendees, the format from here will be that each of our panelists will give a few minutes on their area of expertise. Then we'll move into a panel discussion with Q&A. We have some pre-prepared questions, but depending on time, we'll also hopefully have the opportunity to open it up to questions from the floor, from our audience. So do pop the questions into the Q&A function. You can see it there at the end of your screen. And once, as we go through the session, we'll let you know how we're doing for time, but hopefully we will be able to squeeze in some audience questions as well. Okay, so first up, I'd like to introduce you to Ian Jones. Ian is founder and CEO of the InnoPharma Group and president of InnoPharma Education. Ian has worked for over 20 years within the biopharmaceutical and food manufacturing sectors, becoming a thought leader in advanced manufacturing platforms, sensors, data analytics, and the skills needed to support the transition of industries towards Industry 4.0. So on that note, Ian, I will hand over to you.
Oh, thanks very much, Jill. Good morning, folks. It's great to be invited to chat to you guys this morning. I guess, why is Industry 4.0 important? Another word people use is digitalization. I guess the world and Europe and Ireland see it as a way of achieving two other huge goals. One is achievement of the green agenda, reduction in carbon emissions. How smarter technologies can bring us closer to a carbon neutral continent, Europe, by 2050, which is the target. The other driver is enhanced industrial competitiveness. So how can we keep our industries sufficiently competitive to drive a global economy and to succeed in a global economy? And then they were always the two drivers pre-COVID, and now post-COVID, we're seeing a lot of these digital technologies as being enablers towards working and making stuff in a post-COVID world and getting people back to work. How do we move people from industries and sectors like the services and retail sectors that have really been hit hard by COVID, and some of them may not recover to the heights of employment levels they had before? How do we move people with the right skills into the other future-looking sectors where there are great opportunities. So a little background on Pharma. I set it up in 2009. We have 3 divisions. We have an education and upskilling division where we bring over 1,000 learners a year to our programs, whether you want to be an operator or a technician to work in the high-tech manufacturing sectors, or you're in senior management. We have certificate programs up to master's level programs that help you either get a job in those sectors or progress your career in those sectors. To the extent that we're actually launching in February this year a master's and a postgraduate diploma in digital transformation. So that's one of our most recent programs. A lot of our education programs are underpinned by our technology division, which for the last 11 years have been developing analytical technologies and subsequently cloud-based architectures to get data from processes and to take that data from the sensors and the machines and to do stuff with that, whether that's to help develop your process quicker, to share data across the globe, and to control processes. So you can make sure that those products, whether they're medicines or other products, are made in an efficient, affordable, and safe way every time. So I know, thanks very much, Vivian, for sticking up the question here. I am interested to know what sectors you guys come from. Is it from the biopharma, or is it medtech, agri-food tech, ICT, services in general, cyber, education, or other? I'd be very grateful if you could just stick something in there. It kind of helps shape our talk during the day a little bit too, and how broad or narrow to keep it. So we also have a services division. So for niche skills around equipment validation, sensor validation, qualification, for the high-tech sectors, we offer and contract in niche skills. With 90 people working for us, and we have bases in Dublin. We've got a base in Cork and Limerick as well. So in terms of, there we go. Yes, the context of the challenge. So I've spoken about it already, the environment, reduced climate. Ooh, that's great. Thanks, Vivian. So ICT leader, and then we've got a bit of biopharma, medtech, agri-food tech. Oh, it's a great spread. Okay, thank you. So we talked about the environment, carbon reduction goal, justification for investment, the competitiveness side of it, maintaining industrial competitiveness in Ireland and in Europe. There's some great industrial policy documents out there now, and they talk about, they're well written in good English, and at the European level, they talk about Europe being the home. It was the home of manufacturing. So if you go back 200 years ago to the first industrial revolution, we were the first guys that got going with that in a steam and water era. And then in the 1920s, 1910s, with Henry Ford, the US as well as here, we saw that second industrial revolution impacting more than just Europe. The third one, post-World War II, and all the way trending up to the 2000s with the Facebooks of the world and all that. That's really been an outside of European driven revolution. And the drive now is for the fourth industrial revolution. How can we make sure that Europe maximizes its benefits from that? So that's kind of the competitiveness component. There was a lack of human capital, people, skilled people to work in a lot of these sectors, even pre-COVID. So it's still a challenge, and that's from operators and technicians up. There's still a role for operators and technicians, and we give the rights, we give the skills to people to work in those roles throughout the year, and they will continue. But there's a global deficit in the millions, tens of millions of people we need to work in those roles. So, and the skill sets aren't necessarily even throughout the globe. The skilled operator in Ireland may be different to the skilled operator in another continent or geography. So to bring consistency to those skills to enable a consistent process is important, and Industry 4.0 can support that. The fourth point is, it's going to happen. You know, we've seen it through smart cars, and we've seen it through the social networks. We've seen it now through the ways of working and how we can have a reasonably intimate, strong conversation engagement through Teams or Zoom, which we wouldn't have thought possible 3 or 4 years ago. And the level of adoption wasn't there up to 12 months ago. So it is going to happen. So digitalization of other sectors, particularly the high-tech industrialized sectors, is going to happen. It's a question of when and whether we're a laggard or a leader, and how Ireland, how your company, how Europe can ensure we stay a leader. We're always waiting on the next wave, and like pharma sectors where we support a lot, but like the next wave, we've seen the biotech sector drive on since the early 80s when the first product was approved by the FDA. We've now moved into novel therapies like cell gene therapies. We've seen how the vaccine can be brought from concept through to FDA approval within 11.5 months. So we're seeing disruption there, not only in the molecule, but in the ways in which we get products developed, discovered through AI as a supporter, how we develop them quicker, and how we make that product and ship it around the world in novel ways. And maybe that's where a new disruptor will be for the sector, and for sectors like pharma and medtech as well. Maybe it'll be through the automation and the digitalization of the sector, which changes the way we work. Perhaps that's where one of the key disruptions will be, not through the next Lipitor or the next biotech blockbuster. So I guess the key point is investment in technology and skills is critical now. And we're seeing an Irish government really start tuning into that, and we're definitely seeing at a European level the billions that are being backed to drive this change. Because this is to drive not only the Irish, turning of the Irish industry, but it's got to turn the German industry. The automotive industry in France, for example, you've got the Renaults and the Peugeots really wondering what the hell we're going to do with our hundreds of thousands of people. They're lobbying in Europe saying we need to go digital. We need to get on top of the electric car / battery-driven cars. So this is going to be driven by an entire continent's desire to move towards Industry 4.0. So I think my next slide is about, I'm going to zoom through a few of these because I've talked really slowly for the last while. So I'll zoom through a few of these. So this is the four industrial revolutions, from steam and water through to electrification, through to the internet, and now we're on to Industry 4.0. And really what is Industry 4.0 is the coming together of digital world with the physical world and the virtual world. So how we're engaging now, and how your mobile phone rules your world. I think that is what is Industry 4.0. And then it can benefit lots of things, from discovery through to plant design, digital twins, development, manufacturing, supply chain networks, marketing and sales. I like this one because it gives us a common taxonomy how to talk about it. So these are, I think there's 17, I'm not sure, different components of Industry 4.0. But I like the way it's broken down into 3 waves. There's one wave that we've got our heads around: digitalization, advanced analytics, cloud computing, augmented reality, 3D printing, robotics. We all know about them, and some of us are using them. Second wave, which is kind of between 2016 and 2025, we're in the middle of that one. So we're talking about blockchain, but don't ask me to explain it. AI we use, and we are talking about autonomous systems, smart automation, 6G communication. We're just starting to talk about 5G, and the future of energy. And the third wave, which is ahead of us, won't be really be driven and enabled until we get more advancements in quantum computing. But it's a nice way. So Industry 4.0 covers a lot of stuff. And if we talk about the IoT, the Industrial Internet of Things, that would be an enablement and a cluster of a few of these, which would be the connectivity of the sensors and the machines to drive the data to the cloud, to do stuff with it. So that would be an example of where IoT would fit in here also. And why is it real? Well, we're seeing, for example, that when you look at the Fortune 500 companies, the average lifespan of a company now is 20 years. So disruption happens much quicker. So it is real. And if you look at the top 20 companies now, I think 15, 16 are less than 20 years old. and some of the exceptions are pharma right now. But the argument is, how long more can we sustain with discovery of new molecules without developing disruptive ways of getting that to the patient? And if you look at it, this McKinsey report, which is always an interesting one, you know, in terms of how mature we are as a sector, pharma ain't great. We're just ahead of the public sector, and sorry, Jean, and then we're just behind insurance and banking. You know, so if you look at the other digital leaders and the digitally developed and grown companies like the Twitters, Facebooks of the world, we're well behind them. And other sectors like travel, hospitality are highly mature when it comes to digital enablement. Why is it important? We talked about this in the post-COVID world. You know, we kind of did up this schematic ourselves, trying to explain to people that, you know, the green zones are where you're not in contact with anyone, which is good, and it's definitely bad as well in terms of mental health and engaging with people. But they are, you know, non-engaging zones. Whereas your offices, you can still do stuff in a safe way. Production can be more challenging. People closer to each other. So how do we reduce the level of intensive engagement in the production and the QC lab environments by moving people more closer to and creating more orange and green zones? And that can be done through increased digitalization, for sure. How do we move to a world where we do a third of our work on the factory floor, but 2/3 is done in preparation and post-production analysis outside of the factory floor? And some factories are doing that already, but a lot aren't. So finally, I guess for me, we ran an Industry 4.0 workshop with a lot of it. We had 35 heads of companies, of sites in Ireland, up in Dublin. It was last December, a year ago now. And that was really, really good. Good government engagement as well, various departments, and that was really worthwhile. And some of the we talked about how industries could take on Industry 4.0, where would it make sense, and there were some good roundtable discussions. You know, there should be an investment to support the upgrade of existing facilities in addition to greenfield startups. So yeah, and I think the IDA were there and they've taken that on in terms of, you can't just support the attraction of the new site to build in Cork or wherever it is. We got to ensure that the existing sites get equal access and fair access to a digital overhaul of their site, to drive this digital revolution and to sustain the competitiveness of that site for another 20 years in Ireland. So that was one of the interesting points amongst many. And we were asked to set up a steering group, which we've done. We're very interested in contributors to that. And it was, how do we develop more knowledge sharing vehicles around best practice around this? And we're trying to figure that out as well. How do we share beyond the steering group? At a policy level, I know Jean will talk more to this, but at an Irish level and a European level, there is policy around this, and where policy is scripted, funds and finances will follow. And that's what we've seen. So, you know, there's this is the first council conclusions, I think, in 25 years that reference skills. I'm talking about reskilling and upskilling, sorry, the font is ridiculously small, as a basis for increasing sustainability and employability in the context of supporting economic recovery and social cohesion. So they do see skills as a tangible way of keeping Europe together and showing the citizen that there's value in what they're in the skills they have and the contribution they can make to society, as well as other strong policy around the Green Deal, etc. So final slide. So the opportunities to consider and conclusions: competitiveness. There's opportunities for digitalization, Industry 4.0, to enhance competitiveness in all sectors. And even the opportunity to bring back some of the sectors that we may be losing, like Cork's the home of API manufacturing in Ireland, and I know they've been losing some of that, but there's a real campaign now. Post-COVID, we realized we need to be more sovereign when it comes to the assurance of supply of those medicines. And so there's a real campaign at a European level. How can it be financed to bring back key API manufacturing to Europe? And of course, the Italians and the Germans will be driving a lot of that in this as well. But that is a real opportunity. But that will only be achieved in a broadly competitive way if we can bring greater digitalization to those factories that wasn't there before. Post-COVID ways of work, manufacturing will mirror what we've done in general working and how we have meetings. There will be greater digital engagement and enablement of factories through Industry 4.0. Helps to future-proof our facilities. If we show leadership in Industry 4.0, that can give us a competitive advantage and create us as experts, subject matter experts, provide and then provide global access of our expertise to the rest of the world. So that's important. And that's where things can flip. Not only are we a home of manufacturing, but we can now be the home of how you manufacture and share that knowledge with the rest of the world. This is like, if you talk about a 20-year vision, this is where we could potentially go, becoming a place where you've made stuff for 50 years, but you can actually add more value and scale the economy here by being able to provide our expertise around the world, not only to the Singapores or the Chinas, but what about the South Africas, the developing nations, which need significant advice and technical support. That it's not easy to get on a plane and go and do that, but if we can get real-time visibility on data and communication in an intimate way like this, that can be possible. And then finally, hopefully I've made the point that, you know, investment in technology, investment in skills is essential at an Irish level and at a European level to ensure that we achieve our European Green Deal targets and also the skills to enable. It's easy, the technology will be developed, it will happen, but will we have the skills to support those platforms and those technologies? That's a key point also. So thank you everyone for your time this morning. I know I've ran over, and I look forward to the rest of the talk. Thank you.
Thanks for all those great insights. And you know what, I actually didn't know the hospitality sector was so digitally enabled. So that's a new one for me. That's fantastic to see. And it's great also to see companies like yours focusing on the skills for preparing for Industry 4.0, because you're right. I mean, our ability to ride that wave, as they say, or to be a leader in that space will totally be down to how skilled the Irish workforce is in you know, developing and deploying 4.0. So thank you for that. And I know you mentioned the government, so that's where we're going to go next. So Jean is a principal officer in the Department of Enterprise, Trade and Employment, as I mentioned. She has responsibility for national enterprise strategy, which also includes the Industry 4.0 strategy, and you saw that there on Ian's screen as well. She has previously worked in the Departments of Public Expenditure and Reform and Finance, and in Standards and Poor's, Irish Life Investment Managers, and Ernst & Young. So she is also a chartered accountant with an MBA in finance. And so Jean, what I will do is I will share slides for you from this side, if that's okay, and just let me know when you want me to move to the next slide. So let me know there when you can see those. I'll just bring them up in presentation mode.
Great.
There we go.
Thank you, Gillian. Good morning, everybody, and thanks for the invitation to talk to you today about government's Industry 4.0 strategy. Government is very aware that the diffusion of an advanced wave of ICT technologies will transform the global manufacturing base and its supply chains. For Ireland, which has a very strong manufacturing base with about 235,000 people working directly in manufacturing and a further 200,000 people indirectly employed in this sector. Industry 4.0 represents huge opportunities, but there are also huge challenges. If our manufacturing firms don't invest in these Industry 4.0 technologies, they may find it difficult to remain competitive, which obviously would have an impact on the economy. So that's why my department, the Department of Enterprise, Trade and Employment, has developed the National Industry 4.0 strategy, which sets out a roadmap to support firms to engage in Industry 4.0 and to develop a globally competitive business environment. So the vision, thanks Gillian, the vision that we have set out is that by 2025, Ireland will be a competitive, innovation-driven manufacturing hub at the frontier of this fourth industrial revolution and at the forefront of Industry 4.0 development and adoption. So next slide, please. We've set the strategy or structured the strategy around 6 themes. 1, future manufacturing Ireland. 2, awareness and understanding of concepts. 3, exploring and planning. 4, implementation of firm level Industry 4.0 strategies. 5, framework conditions, and 6, implementation of the strategy. Now I'll go into each of these and set out some of the actions that we're planning to take under each. So the first one, future manufacturing Ireland. This theme addresses the RDI landscape for advanced manufacturing. We have a number of research centres around the country that are under this Science Foundation Ireland that work in or support advanced manufacturing. But under this theme, we commit to establishing a body called Future Manufacturing Ireland, which will be a governance structure which will ensure coordination and coherence of advanced manufacturing RD&I support across all of these stage research facilities and centres. Future Manufacturing Ireland will also drive public-private collaboration in order to accelerate the Industry 4.0 transformations. Next slide, please. So Team 2 sets out actions to build awareness in businesses of the opportunities and challenges that will arise from Industry 4.0 and how they can access government supports and expertise and other support. An important action under this theme is supporting the development of industry-led clusters, and there are a number of funding streams that we have that can support the creation of clusters and hubs led by industry. So next theme, please. Theme 3, the next stage really, we want businesses to be aware of Industry 4.0, and then we want to give them opportunities to explore what Industry 4.0 can do and to begin experimenting. So this is probably the most important theme, I would think. It sets out actions which will allow firms to experiment with Industry 4.0 technologies outside of their own environment. So in these research facilities, they can experiment and use the technology. There will be supports to help firms develop in-house pilots and to help them develop their strategies and roadmaps for adapting Industry 4.0. A really important action under this theme is the establishment of the Advanced Manufacturing Centre in Limerick, which was approved in Budget 2021 and will provide access to demonstrators for firms, which will clearly be really important in moving this along. So next slide, please. Theme 4 sets out actions to support implementation at firm level. So this is about making funding available, and this is also about giving support to firms to develop the skills that they need. And the final bullet point then addresses incentives for firms to work together with research facilities and to collaborate, and that's under our Disruptive Technologies Fund, which provides funding for businesses to collaborate together on innovative projects, and there are streams under Industry 4.0 for that. So next slide. Theme 5 is about the framework conditions, and these are the things that it's for government to do. It's about regulatory environment, it's about standards, it's about linking up with other countries and providing the conditions to support firms doing that. So the two key ones for Industry 4.0 are standards development and that international connectedness thing. And we have a lot of programs to link researchers between countries so that, again, that we're at the forefront of research and development in this area. And then next slide, please. So the final theme is about how do we implement the strategy, and that's around, we are setting up a stakeholder forum which will oversee implementation of the strategy. It'll be chaired by a minister and meet regularly. So it'll also, in addition to overseeing implementation, it provides a feedback loop. So firms will be represented in the forum and they can feed back to government, which will allow us to adapt the strategy if required. Next slide, please. And then, first of all, unfortunately, the strategy was launched at the exactly this time last year. And then just as we were gearing up to begin implementation, COVID hit, and all of government was, for the first 6 months, I would say, completely consumed with responding to COVID and mobilizing all of the different things that we have. We are now turning to implementation of this strategy, and I want to reassure people that this is a priority for 2021 and the following years. In fact, the National Economic Plan, which fingers crossed will be launched next week if Brexit doesn't get in the way, has future manufacturing, or Industry 4.0, as one of the key initiatives that's highlighted right at the start of the strategy. But one key piece of progress that we did do this year was that we got the funding for this Advanced Manufacturing Centre, which will be a key driver of the strategy, because, as I said, it provides that demonstrator capacity for firms and will help with driving collaboration, etc. And we're also beginning pulling together this coordination mechanism for future manufacturing Ireland. So next year, you should see a lot of movement in this space, and government, as I said, is very committed to Industry 4.0. We see it as a really important plank of overall enterprise policy. So thank you.
Super, thanks, Jean. And you know what, it is great to see government's commitment to, you know, to developments in this area, to support this area, because I think it is going to be key to the progress that we're going to make. And I know there's a poll popping up on your screen there, folks, so I encourage you to answer that. I know, Jean, that the strategy is out there, so for anybody interested in this space, interested in learning more, the Ireland's Industry 4.0 strategy 20 to 25 is out there if folks want to have a read of that. And I presume, Jean, that accessing how to access that funding and stuff like that is in that document.
Well, the document will list out the different sources of funding. Our agencies are really important in driving this strategy. So that's Enterprise Ireland and the IEA. But a big part of what Future Manufacturing Ireland Coordination Group, once that's up and running, we will also be doing a lot of disseminating information around how to access funding. So there's grants, there's loan schemes, and then we're also looking at trying to make some changes to the tax system as well, which I know stakeholders always want tax changes. So that's something we're trying to achieve as well.
Absolutely, those kind of things are key incentives for groups to get involved and get working on starting into maybe their strategy in this space. So thanks very much, Jean. Next up, folks, last but certainly not least, and I'd like to put you now in the safe hands of Martin Leahy. So Martin is an accomplished technology leader in the manufacturing arena with a wealth of hands-on experience in the pharma and biopharma sector. He is currently Senior Director of International Information Technology at BioMarin, which is an advanced biopharma manufacturing facility specializing in the production of life-altering and life-saving orphan therapies for patients worldwide. So I'm very interested in hearing more about that. And absolutely, BioMarin has been at the forefront of advanced data analytics in the manufacturing environment. And so Martin is going to talk about some of that as well and give us some great examples of what they're doing in that space. So Martin, on that note, I will hand over to you.
Thanks, Jill. And like you, I'm delighted to hear that government strategy. And I'd say, Jean, there could be a queue at your door tomorrow morning of people with ideas and money boxes in their hand, ready to receive donations. So don't say you haven't been warned. At BioMarin, as Jill said, we're very focused on specialist medicines for what's known as we make orphan drugs, which is medicine for very rare diseases and very rare conditions. We're about the, I suppose, improvement of the quality of life of our patients, and in some cases the preservation of the life of our patients. Most of our therapies are for a very small sector, and the work is extremely specialized. The company is based in California, but Ireland and Shambali, our plant there, is the primary manufacturing location globally. So I suppose just before getting into some of the examples, I think we need to go back to one or two principles. You know, we're all technology professionals, or certainly appreciators of technology, and let's not forget why we're in this. You know, a huge percentage of the time, it's about providing key information. And, you know, the 4 different types of information that we go after, that hasn't changed. Industry 4.0 isn't going to change this. We're still going to be very concerned with what happens, why it happens, and then the real enabler with Industry 4.0 is to allow us to move forward into the real value-added part of information. What's going to happen? And then finally, how do we make certain outcomes happen? We've always been after that in technology. It's just that Industry 4.0 and IoT and so forth and analytics makes it a lot more straightforward. I think the other side as well is sometimes people are daunted by, oh man, how am I going to get all this data? Where am I going to get it? And my systems are not flexible enough to deliver it and so forth. And, you know, a lot of us live in the world where a big ERP type system drives a lot of what we do. You know, if you're in banking, it's the financial system for the bank. In manufacturing, it's usually Oracle or SAP or BAN or something like that. In contact center industry, it could be your CRM, or it could be your telephony system. You know, and often it's an old technology, but it's a great technology. It delivers what you want. The information is accurate. It's always reliable. And what I found certainly in the last 7 or 8 years, it's become much easier to kind of put a layer around that system, which allows you to access the data and to pull the data far more effectively. A lot of the CRMs out there now are much more straightforward. Power BI, I find a really, really handy tool for assessing big banks of data. You know, in BioMarin, we use Oracle, so OBIEE is a big pathway enabler for us. But, you know, we're using the cloud a lot more now, and third-party solutions are starting to come to the fore in a much more flexible way. We're going to look at those last two a little bit here now. So I suppose, you know, again, Industry 4.0, it's still going back to basics. You know, people who are clued into the process, clued into the technology, asking the challenging questions, then you capture and you synthesize the data into some sort of a machine, which will hopefully then produce information, and the outcome of your process gives clear information rather than just more data, or rather than just confusing data. You know, simple stuff like an accurate percentage, a yes/no decision, you know, a range of data that you're working in, or even, you know, and I go back to my time in the contact industry, we get most calls on Tuesdays at 2 p.m. Let's find that out for definite and why we're getting that. That hasn't changed in whatever 500 years of information processing, but what we've got now is a much easier ability to carry out this process. So I suppose the key principles are: make sure you're asking the right questions, and detailed knowledge of the process will give you that ability. Be open to new ideas in the space, lean into the new technologies. Don't be worried about, oh, I'm losing control if I bring in a third party, or I'm not experienced in cloud or whatever. There's lots of people to help you in this space. And, you know, don't be afraid to challenge your choice of metrics either. We often have situations where, you know, the metrics that you use in your industry were set up years ago, long before this technology was available. And, you know, are you sure you're looking at the right metrics? So a super fast whistle stop tour of the manufacturing process in biopharma. And if there's anybody on from any bio company, please give me a leave pass on this. This is going to be a short and sweet. Typically, certainly at BioMarin and in a lot of companies, there are 2 main processes in manufacturing. There's upstream and downstream. And upstream is all about creating your raw material. An awful lot of biomanufacture is associated with the production of cellular material. In our case at BioMarin, most of our therapies that we make at Shambali focused around the production of enzymes. And a lot of our patients, their conditions are caused by the inability to produce a certain type of enzyme, or inability to produce enzyme that's active enough to allow growth, or to allow immunity, or dietary processing, or whatever. So we're very much about the production of enzymes, and enzymes, same as in our bodies, are produced in cells. So in order to produce a volume of enzymes, you will need a bank of cells. So we have standard cells which we will clone and then begin to multiply. Once you have enough cells, you then move to the downstream process, which is where you nurture that bank of cells. You create the conditions and the nutrition and so forth, where the cells can get to work and produce the enzyme that you need. And downstream is the process that produces your medicine, so to speak. Obviously, there's lots more around fill finishing, packaging, creating of sterile injectables and all of that sort of stuff. But downstream is really where this particular example is working on in the production of the enzyme. And obviously, you know, as I said a while ago, sometimes the challenge with patients is their own enzymes are not active enough. And we have this measurement called specific activity, which talks about or describes the power of the enzyme really, and how effective it is. And we're getting into some data here on screen. You can see on that graph on the bottom right, if you look at the blue line, you can see there's a gradual reduction in that blue line over the course of a 3-year period. And this related to specific activity of a particular medicine we were working on. We were trying to figure out what causes the shift. If you look around the middle of 2018 there, it did drop quite significantly. And we're trying to figure out, even though it's zigzagging, it's still on the way down. So, you know, really, really difficult. There are so many variables in production in biopharma that it's not a trivial task to go after a particular problem. So in order to look at this specific activity, we decided to look at the method we were using to do the manufacture in the downstream space. That was why I suppose the hypothesis we put. Could we look at method variability as a cause of the problem? So we partnered with two key players in this space. Number one is NIBRT, the National Institute of Biotechnology Research and Training. And the other one then is Siemens. We all know Siemens, and they've got an excellent product called Biomac, which is a large analytical tool specifically written and built for the bio industry. So this is an area we went into several of our systems to start looking for data. Our laboratory systems, our process manufacturing systems, our automation systems, and even our ERP systems, which was giving us information about the raw materials we were purchasing. And, you know, I'm not going to go through this data, but you can see the type of data we started to build up and the ranges and so forth, and started to get some basic information coming back out. And you look at these diagrams on the right and you're thinking, yeah, I could understand that. That's a fairly straightforward set of graphs. If I was a chemist, I'd manage that. But once you get into the more serious data analysis, like the cluster plots and the nonlinears, and especially when you get down to the Pearson correlations and so forth, it's really difficult to do this manually, or it's really difficult to do this and you know, without a large group of experts. And this is where we leaned into Biomac. Biomac was able to automate an awful lot of this and produce an awful lot of the information that we needed. We're talking about tens of millions of data points in this analysis over a 2-year period. So, you know, like I say, we took information from the factory floor. That was a capture part with the laboratory and our automation systems, as well as our manufacturing hardware. We pushed it through the big machine and got the Siemens Biomac working on it. And we did get some outcomes, and we found method was an influencer, but also something we hadn't expected at all. Our glutamate concentration and our harvest titer in the upstream part of the manufacture were a huge influencer as well. So that's example one. It's all about capturing large amounts of data in that particular one and synthesizing large amounts of data. And the point being that, you know, we had strong process expertise to deliver our algorithm, but critical for us, the third-party engine delivered the goods. There's no way we would have managed this on our own. It would have taken us years to build the engine to do it. I'll just move on to a much simpler one here. Do you want to finish that poll there first, Jill? And this is you know, we heard earlier about COVID and coming back from COVID and so forth. This is around contact tracing. This is a system we developed in April and May of this year at BioMarin. This is much more about data capture and using Industry 4.0 around the data capture side, because the data synthesis is much simpler than what I've just shown you. So we had a situation where we couldn't stop manufacturing. We couldn't send everybody home during the lockdowns. We had to keep working in the plant, and we've kept working 7/24 right throughout the various lockdowns and different levels and so forth. But one challenge we were having was contact tracing. We were filling out Excel sheets and paper logs and so forth. They weren't accurate. People were forgetting to fill them out, and then if we ever had a case that somebody needed to go for a test, it was really, really difficult to produce the contact list. So we went after wearables. Could we use wearables to automatically contact trace? And really the big test for us was to look at the wearable technology. We looked at Bluetooth with data logic, and we looked at ultra wideband technology with a number of other vendors. And we eventually partnered with Vision ID and Clonmel to source ultra wideband devices to see could we get them to work. So basically, we set up the devices to record the transactions that they used, which was that watch number 529 would meet card number 627, and that would be recorded on the watch, and that was allowing us to record the various contacts. If someone came within 2 meters of another device, then their device would record who they connected with and how long they connected for, and that was it. That was our basic data capture sorted. So this is the architecture that we built, and I'm not going to spend too long talking about this, but for the nerds in the audience, just to show you how simple it was to gather this data. Look at number 1 there. This is the 2 tags connecting with each other and each recording the other via ultra wideband, and then we use ultra wideband to feed up into the company or into some gateways that we built around the campus to process the transactions. Ultra wideband, by the way, we picked over Bluetooth because it's far more accurate. Bluetooth isn't really that accurate once you get below 2 meters. I know the government use it in the tracing app, and there isn't much choice of any other technology to use because Bluetooth is what phones use. But it wasn't really good enough. We found when you got into close contact, and it was recording a lot of false positives, and especially in environments like manufacturing where there's a lot of metal involved. The gateways don't have to be online all the time. We put them in dressing rooms and entrances and exits just to record the transactions as the people went past. The watches and the tags would buffer the transactions and feed them in. You can see there they're feeding up through our network and off into a simple database that we set up in the cloud. We initially also started setting up the gateways with just 4G connectors in them, so they could go straight over the 4G network to the cloud. But we still have 1 or 2 of those there outdoors down in the plant, but mostly we've used our existing network and our existing internet connection. Then we have a simple responsive website in the cloud, which pulls down the data and can give you an instant picture of who's doing what, and if you need to run a contact list, it takes seconds. So look, same theory again. A good question asked. It was about capturing and synthesizing data, and then the information and your outcomes are easily answered. I suppose the key here is this is a much simpler synthesis problem. It was all about the front end. It's all about the data capture. And Industry 4.0, with its ability, with Internet of Things, and with simple, cheap, fast devices that are reliable, allows a completely different approach to what we're doing. And this has very much enabled us to keep our medicine moving out to our patients. However, once again, process expertise was key. And this time, the third-party partnership was about delivering the hardware, not around the data at the back end. So that's it, really. Some basic principles and 2 applications of those currently that we've run this year at BioMarin.
Thanks, Martin. What's really clear from your presentation is just the sheer volume of data you guys are using, and it's fantastic to see you challenging the data and making sure you're asking the right question. And I imagine then the key role of data scientists and that expertise within your organization. And over the last few years, we've been hearing a lot about, data scientists, that's their key job going forward. And you often wonder where they are and what they're doing. It's quite clear where they are and what they're doing within BioMarin. So thank you so much for that. We're going to jump now, folks, to the Q&A part of the session. So I'll ask the other panelists to please turn on their cameras. And given that we're tight on time, I might also ask that we kind of be brief in the answering if that works okay. So Jean, I might jump to you first if that's okay, because I'm wondering, I guess, is there as much opportunity in the public sector as there is in the private sector for adopting Industry 4.0 technologies?
There's a lot of work going on in the public sector on the spectrum of digitization. So there have been a number of projects that in RPA, which is the robotic end of things, simplifying some of the processes that we do. We're looking at introducing different types of artificial intelligence, and there's a project group that's about to start on that. But it's already being used in areas like the Department of Agriculture. Their inspectors use satellite technology now which eliminates the need for a lot of site visits. Their health are using it. And you mentioned the COVID app. Interestingly, Met Éireann are using AI in some of their weather forecasting activities. So it's certainly, while I know we were at the very bottom of that chart that Ian put up, we're still slowly moving down this road. But it might be just worth saying, when I was looking at all the charts that Martin was putting up, the thing about the work we do in government, there are so many factors and that make this more difficult. And just a good example is what happened in the summer in the UK with the A-level results and the algorithm that obviously it probably had a very good relationship with the outcomes, but look at the huge furore and issues, political issues that it caused. So that might explain a little bit why there's some hesitancy and why it can be a difficult endeavor to introduce some of this technology in the public sector, but we are at the same time doing it. Sorry, that was a long answer.
No, that's brilliant, because it's very reassuring to know that government are looking at adopting this as well, because we often kind of see government as maybe a follower more than a leader, but at the same time, it's great that this is on the roadmap. They already have ideas of how to implement it, and great examples of where it's best implemented. So fantastic. Thank you, Jean. Ian, maybe if I go to you next, we hear a lot about Industry 4.0 being very suited to manufacturing. What about the others? Are there benefits to the other industries from this technology or these technologies?
Yeah, there are. I think if you look at Ireland, what are we do make stuff, and we are coders. That's what a lot of us do. So that's why I guess why the government are focused so much on it, because our economy is so dependent on those sectors. But in terms of other, what I love about digitalization, so if you look at there's two stages. There's digitization, which is getting data from paper onto your iPad or into your laptop, and then digitalization is doing something with that data, like Martin was doing, to solve a problem or to predict a process deviation in the future or whatever may happen. So those benefits are relevant for lots of sectors, and that's fine. So the data bit is really interesting. But what I love the fact of digitalization in this though is it enables you to tailor your workflows to whichever way you want. So whether you're working in a retail environment, and we see a lot of it in services already in terms of how you're taking your bookings, how you're processing those orders to the chef. Jesus, no one writes down the order anymore. It all goes in the iPad into the chef. So that level of digitization is already there. And I'm not saying we're going to go to the level of digitalization where we're going to be predicting what you're going to have for your dinner, but I think there's opportunities for those tailor-made workflows to be used in those other sectors. I think there is greater opportunity though for larger entities rather than smaller entities, perhaps, because where you want to bring consistency across large work groups and processes that are at scale, I think that's where you see greatest benefit. If you're a smaller SME, you probably have the best guy, best girl doing the work anyway. And okay, we may perhaps AI or augmented reality can perhaps enhance that performance of that individual a small bit, but I think it's got greater potential for bringing consistency to how people and how we do stuff, and to help tailor make those workflows for large sectors. if that makes sense. I think it has greater relevance for the manufacturing side for sure. And I see where I see it's more utility more there, I think, in the short to medium term, but I see its relevance everywhere. And perhaps other sectors are just more, like if you look at the aviation sector, the services sector, and retail, a lot of them are using a lot of this stuff already.
Perfect. And I think there'll be opportunities with the consortium as well that Jean mentioned for the smaller ones to get involved. So that's cool. Martin, if I might jump to you next. It's a daunting kind of area for someone or organizations to get into if they maybe haven't even started on that journey yet. If they're looking to engage for the first time, or if they're looking to catch up, what would be the first steps in doing that, would you recommend?
Well, I'm slightly biased, but I would say outfits like IT at Cork are a great place to start, right? Because you'll find your peers in an organisation like us, and there's lots of other similar type organisations. Go into your industry, look at your if you're an SME, look at your SME organisations. Talk to IBEC, talk to whoever, and you'll find lots and lots of people are on this journey ahead of you already in the same industry, and people are absolutely interested in sharing. There's no worry about competitive advantage here because everybody is taking such first baby steps. If you look at we use Nibert at BioMarin. We're not a small outfit. We're not a inexpert, but we still had to go to Nibert where we felt the real help and expertise will be. So I'd say industry benchmarking is key, and also Google is your friend here. There'll always be somebody down the line just ahead of you who's doing this stuff. And the last point I'll make is don't be afraid to bring third parties in to help, because they can be extremely cost effective, and it would have taken us, for example, years to do that analysis on the specific activity if we tried to build it ourselves. Understand the benefit comes quickly and it won't cost you that much.
Absolutely. Thanks, Martin. Jean, a question in from the audience there is, how do people access the Innovation Centre in Limerick? So if you're a service provider or a systems integrator, how do you gain access to the Innovation Centre?
With that one, it's run by the IDA. So go through the IDA and they can link you in.
Perfect. That's your route in there. Excellent. And another one, I guess, Jean, for you as well. How do the public understand? Oh, hang on. How do the public understand the composition and outcomes of Government 4.0 steering group? So I suppose
the composition will be. It hasn't been 100% decided yet, but there'll be the representative bodies will be on it, and then I think some companies and the agencies. So there'll be more information about that early next year.
Brilliant.
But the best way in again is through your representative body, because we always include them in all these.
Perfect. That's your path in there. And I see a question there from Maria as well. Are the colleges and the universities set up to start creating the talent that's going to be needed in this space as far as the level of capabilities and skills in Ireland is concerned? Anyone want to take that one?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a passionate believer in understanding your process. That's how you really make hay here, and partner with the technology groups. And so I think the colleges, depending on the college, are very strong in this. It's certainly for biopharma, we are getting the right talent out of the colleges, but you can never have enough analysts.
Roll out the analysts.
Yeah, I think just to add to that, that's good. Just add to that, Jill. I guess. There is a lot of government funding through Springboard and the July stimulus around modular programs that would be government incentivized and 90% funded programs for people. And a lot of them would be digital oriented programs and digitalization focused. So that's certainly worth looking at. And yeah, if we're looking at how we make sure there's 220,000 people that are working in high-tech manufacturing and then beyond retail and services, how they have the right skills, as well as the additional 10-15% that go into those sectors every year. Yeah, there's probably a scale challenge. How do we make sure we've got enough people? It's, we've been hearing about enough programmers, and the projection was last year, I think we needed 70,000 programmers over the next 4 years, whatever it was. We're going to start hearing more and more of that within the digital side of things. So I think universities, colleges, and all education providers can do more to ensure that they've got the right types of programs from every level, for the operator and technician, all the way up to the change agents at the transformation level, to support it. Yeah.
Perfect.
I can come in as well quickly.
Sure.
There is a body called the Expert Group on Future Skills Needs that looks forward at what are the kind of skills the economy will need. So they then interact with the universities and are involved in planning courses. So this is something that government very much tries to plan for. Then the other lever that we have is employment permits, and well, there's two parts to it. It's our linkages with other countries, and then we do have employment permits as a lever as well. So so we certainly, from a government standpoint, we are doing all we can to ensure that, and that's part of the framework conditions that I mentioned, that there is an ability to have sufficient skills in the country.
Brilliant. It's great to know all those support systems are there. So it's really a matter of people becoming aware of them and then maybe working with others to understand how to best leverage them. So thank you for that, folks. I'm conscious we're over time. We could certainly have gone on for another half an hour here with all the great questions. But I do want to finish on time and get you back to your day job, as they say. So enormous thank you to our panel. It's been an informative and inspiring hour. So thank you so much. I'd also like to thank IT at Cork, and most especially Vivian, John, James, and the Tech Talk team, and Juliet. So this Industry 4.0 is still evolving, and it's clear that companies are adopting the technologies, reaping the benefits, and future-proofing their organizations. So, we're very fortunate to have a government that's supporting that, and industries that are driving it and leading the way. So it's a fantastic ecosystem there if we can all leverage it. That's it from us. This is the last Tech Talk breakfast series for 2020. Yay, end of 2020. We're all looking forward to 2021 when we'll be back with more Tech Talks. It's been a pleasure connecting with you all this morning, and I wish you all a very productive rest of day, and thank you for tuning in. We'll see you in the new year.
Thanks, folks.
See you,
Bye-bye.
Jill. Thanks, folks.
Take care.
Bye.
Well done.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.